What up? What up? It's been a minute since I've been live, but I wanted to go live and have a conversation about something that I heard about yesterday, and I thought it was a very interesting topic. And I don't want to be on here too long because I'm an hour behind when I was planning to go live, and I've got other stuff to do. So I just wanted to go live, just do a chilling chat because I haven't done that in a while. And like I said, I wanted to talk about something that I had heard about yesterday. If anybody, what's up, photo? That is definitely hard to say, photo. Can you do an audio check for me and make sure my audio sounds good? Because I don't go live enough to have this set up in. So what's up, Agnetha? T to the M to the IDD. What up? What up? Cool. Yeah, I gotta get one of them capture cards at some point because I hate having to use my old computer because this thing about to start sounding. I'm already at 169 degrees, and the only thing I have open is Chrome in this StreamYard. It's crazy. All right, man. I'm gonna drop this link so you could tap in. Definitely want to know your thoughts. Okay, so to get to it, and I was on Chuck AP Studios live yesterday, and there was a guy that he had on his live that mentioned this controversy that was going on in the photography world, and I hadn't heard about it. I hadn't seen it anywhere. I guess there was an article on Petapixel, and I don't follow that site too much, so I didn't hear about it. Now, there's kind of a lot to unpack and to have the conversation, but I don't want to spend too much time reading the whole article or anything like that. But I'm going to try to see if I can give the cliff notes of the story to help drive what I wanted to talk about on this live. Now, there was a photographer by the name of, and I got to look at my phone because I don't know stuff off the top of my head. Photographer by the name of Clancy Gebler Davies. She won a British Journal of Photography Female in Focus Award last year that she submitted. And basically, it was a photo. From my understanding, it was a concept that she had been working on for years. So she basically was like covered in hair, and it was, from my understanding, it's her hair. So she basically would grow her hair out, cut it, and then she originally made it into a vest. And so then that sparked the concept to basically do like a full body suit of her with her hair. Okay. So she had this concept for a long time. So she had this image that she submitted to this publication and she won. Now, I'll hold off on that. Okay. So she submitted it. She won. There was a photographer by the name of, where's his name? William Corbett, that accused her of stealing the photo. And basically, he claimed that he made the creative decisions of the photo. So now, let me give a little bit more story. So basically, she had this concept. She thought of everything. She planned everything. Let me read her quote so that way I don't mess up anything at all. She said that Corbett did press the shutter, but that was all he did. She said that he had absolutely no editorial input whatsoever. She said basically that Corbett was merely acting as a remote shutter since she was wrapped in hair and unable to press it herself. He was recommended by two male photographer friends, and I explained it was a simple studio shoot of me in a costume that I would be directing. He told me he could do that. Just to be crystal clear, he had no involvement in the concept, planning, or finance. It was a conscious decision not to use a remote shutter and shoot it myself. It would have changed the nature of the image. She further goes on to say it shows Corbett's total misunderstanding of photography, that he cannot grasp that this is my work and that it is a self-portrait. He was a technician paid to press the shutter because I couldn't. So there's a whole lot there. So basically, she had this concept. She wrapped herself in her hair from head to toe. And actually, let me see. I'll try to kind of put it up to the screen so you guys can see the photo in question here. So I'll try to see if my camera will focus on that. Maybe. Okay, so there's the photo. So she was wrapped in her hair from head to toe. And so essentially she brought in this photographer to basically push the button. So there's a couple of questions that I have that I want to know your opinion on. Number one, what do you feel constitutes a self-portrait? Because in this instance, she didn't actually take the picture, but she still considers it a self-portrait. So what would be your definition of a self-portrait? In order for it to be a self-portrait, do you feel that you have to be the one in control of the camera for it to be a self-portrait? Even if you do all of the setup, the concept, the planning, the lighting, the financing, if you do everything involved in that photo and someone comes in and pushes the button on the camera, do you still consider it a self-portrait or not? Number one. And then number two, when it comes to collaborations, who do you give the credit to and how much credit do you give that person for creating that image? So let's say, for example, you have a hairstylist, you have a makeup artist, you have I can't think of the word, but someone that designs your outfit. And then you have, whoever else, so you have a team of people that's helping you look the way that you look. Now, let's say it's your idea, it's your concept, like, how you want to look, but, you can't do your own hair, you can't do your own makeup, you bring your stylist in to help make sure everything is in place. So you have all of these people that are helping you essentially bring your concept to life. You know what you want it to look like, but you obviously need a team to help you bring that to life. You would think, obviously, you're going to give credit to these people, but when it comes to the finished product, how much credit, how much weight do they have on the creation of that image? Let's see. Yo.
What's going on?
How much. So in this particular case, this photographer is basically saying that he was the one that chose the camera. He was the one that chose the lens, the camera settings, all of those things. And so in his mind, he feels that he basically was the creative mind behind the image. He made the image. He is essentially saying it's his image. He took the picture. He picked these technical aspects of it. So therefore, it's his picture. Obviously, she's arguing otherwise. So in the chat, put what your thoughts are as I kind of give my thoughts as a photographer, someone that has done collabs, and as someone that has done a lot of self-portraits in my day, my thoughts on it. Okay, so first of all, from a self-portrait perspective, because I think that's the easiest one to talk about, and the other one gets a little bit more involved. So from a self-portrait perspective, you would think that it would be clear cut. It would be black and white. You know, if you didn't take the picture, you can't consider it a self-portrait. But I somewhat struggle with that, because understanding what goes into doing a self-portrait, if I literally just have someone pushing the button, how is that really any different than using a remote cable release or a remote or setting the timer? You know, like how does that change it? So just by having a human button pushing the shutter, how does that change the dynamic than if you were just using a remote shutter or a wireless remote or something like that, which is typically what you do. So you use a remote, a cable release, the camera phone app. Like, you're not physically hitting the camera button when you're doing a self-portrait. So why is it, if you literally brought in somebody that their only job was to just hit the button, that's it, they had no other involvement in the photo whatsoever, all they're doing is literally hitting a button, in my opinion, to me, that still is a self-portrait. You've still done all of the legwork. You've done the composition. You've done the lighting. You've put yourself in the position of how you wanted to have yourself. To me, it's still a self-portrait. Now, obviously, from a legal perspective, it is his picture. That's, you know, that the law is pretty straightforward on that. Like, whoever hits the button, they own the copyright. So unless that person were employed by this city or they had a contract that specifically said, I am the copyright owner, even though you're pushing the button, it technically is his picture. T-Mid, what's happening, bro?
What's going on? I got an audio check.
Yep, you good.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on that as I go through these comments here?
my thought. So was this is this his camera?
From my understanding, I believe it was his camera.
Ah, there we go.
Because I remember reading somewhere, and in the Northups, they had a video on this, and I actually watched this yesterday, and that was how I got more information on it to search it. But from what they said in their video, he said that he picked the camera, he picked the lens, he picked the settings, and all of that. So that makes me think that it was his camera, but I don't know that for certain.
Okay. So we gotta do some assumptions, things
Yeah.
like
So
that.
his
Because I
quote
guess,
was, "She was wrapped in the hair for 8 hours. She didn't choose the lens, camera, ISO, or shutter speed. She didn't make any of the creative decisions. She made a complete fool of herself." End quote.
I would like to assume that it is his camera with regards to the way he's approaching that in that quote, because obviously he sounds like he's a pretty groomed photographer himself if he can get down to the technical details like that, whereas somebody else who you might just really only need to push the button, when you start talking about ISO and shutter speed, they're like, what? Like, just set all that up for me already so I can just press the button for you.
So here would be the question though. Okay. So let's say she did all the legwork. Obviously, this was, you know, it was her outfit or whatever. It was her concept. Let's say she did the lighting. She and if you look at that photo, like, it's not like compositionally it was anything spectacular. Like, there was no creative composition to the shot
Oh
at
yeah,
all. Like,
are you able to
literally,
put that photo back up?
yeah. Um, let's see here. I mean, there's nothing. There is nothing special about that composition right there. Like that is just somebody standing on a wall and someone took the picture. So
Oh man, it looked like
in looking and seeing that picture right there, okay, and seeing that picture right there, is there anything that he would have done from a camera perspective, from a lens perspective, or from a settings perspective that really would have changed that image so much to where whatever he chose to take that picture carries so much weight that he can say, I was the one that made all the creative decisions, not her. If it wasn't for me, this photo wouldn't be what this photo is. If he did used a different camera, if he used a different lens, if he, used ISO 800 instead of 400, if he dragged the shutter or, whatever the case, if any of those settings would have changed, like those things that he made those decisions on, do you feel like that had any impact on the outcome of that image?
So what I honestly think in that perspective, I feel like there's different levels of abstractions when it comes to creativity. So one person's one light setup can be super creative to them, whereas to the next person they're like, oh, you only did a one light setup. So in that instance, he could have moved the camera uh to 45 degrees to the to the left and felt like that added a different aspect in terms of creativity.
Do you think it would do you think it would change anything?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it would change something because, and the reason why I say this is because we all have different eyes. So the way she would see the shot is different from the way he would see the shot. And so I think all the time in photography is art, it's subjective, but we all have a different type of eye. So it could have been set up a certain way, and he's like, no, let's increase the aperture because we want a little bit more depth of field, whereas she might would have shot it wide open. So in that respect, I feel like it is creatively his own from taking the photo standpoint.
That's an interesting perspective, because I feel the opposite in this particular photo. Not in what you're saying from a general sense. From a general sense, I agree. But in this particular photo, and I've got her photos comment on the screen because I think it's a very good question. Outside of the concept, would this photo have even been considered? I don't think that it would have, because there isn't anything special about this picture. And I get, you know, art is art. Every photographer, like, I'm
Yeah.
not trying to judge and anything like that. So, we don't have to go down that road. But just like when you look at it, if she was just wearing a normal outfit, a t-shirt and some jeans, nobody would look at that picture the way that it's composed, the camera that he used, the lens, the f-stop, the ice. You would look at that and you wouldn't even bat an eye. Like, that wouldn't even be any image that you would stop on. It would be as basic of an image as you can find. So when you look at it from that perspective,
Hmm.
it's like, the thing that makes that image is the fact that she's covered in hair from head to toe. So to
Right.
me, no matter what decision he would have made, it wouldn't have changed that the focus was still the hair, regardless of what angle he chose, regardless of what aperture he chose, regardless of any of the settings. It wouldn't have made that image any better, and it wouldn't have made the image well, he could have made it worse, but to me, what makes the image, and I think what made the image win the award, was the fact that she was covered in her own hair from head to toe. I just don't think that anything that he did had that much of an impact to where he could say, I made all the creative decisions. If it wasn't for me, this image wouldn't have been what it was and it wouldn't have won. That's wild. Like, to me, I disagree with that. Now let me backtrack though, and kind of say how she got herself in this situation to begin with. When she won this award, and she won this last year, and Charles Davis, you're right, they did pull it, and there wasn't any money involved. It was kind of more of just a what's up, Bryce? It was just more of a just to be able to be like, yeah, I won. I was in this publication. When she won the award, she in that Instagram post, she thanked a couple of people, but she didn't acknowledge the photographer at all. And she labeled it a self-portrait. So she labeled it a self-portrait, thanked a couple other people on the team, didn't mention the photographer a single time. And I feel like that's where she kind of messed up, because it's like, and it, it's kind of tough because I think in her mind, she knew that like we're only bringing you in to hit a button. Like that was her thought when she brought this guy in. Clearly, there was a miscommunication or a misunderstanding somewhere, and he maybe thought differently. So
Right.
it sounds like they didn't communicate very well, in my opinion. But I feel like that's where she kind of messed up. Like if she would have gave dude credit, he probably wouldn't have been too, or if she wouldn't have labeled it a self-portrait. If she wouldn't have labeled it a self-portrait, probably wouldn't have been too pressed about it. But the fact that I took this picture and you submit it and you labeled it a self-portrait and you don't even shout me out.
Right. Right. When you start talking about people giving you credit for things, it gets real sticky because, even in the Instagram world, sometimes you deal with models and they will shout out the person. It could be a collab. They will shout out the person that did their hair, did their nails, did their makeup, but will leave a photographer out, right? So that type of thing will make you say, okay, you wanna play like that? Now we gotta go back. But even the titling, I feel like it's kind of fraud because even if he only pressed a button, I don't feel like that's a self portrait. Because if that's the case, then I might as well have a whole photo shoot when everybody link up at WPPI and let y'all take my photo, and then I could post it and say it's a self portrait.
Okay, that's yes, and it's tough because, like I said, when you think of a self-portrait, it seems black and white. But if you literally had somebody come in, like you had everything set up, and this is for the people in the chat too. I want to know how you feel about this too. If you had everything set up, you had the camera on a tripod, you had everything the way that you wanted to be, and you literally just had somebody come in and push the button. So now I'm not necessarily talking about like this situation because it
Mm-hmm.
didn't sound like this was that, but I'm just curious. So if you had everything set up, you had your tripod, but for whatever reason, you just didn't want to use a remote or a cable relay, whatever. You just wanted somebody to push the button. If somebody literally just comes in and push the button, is that really that much different than you having a cable release and pushing the button? Like what makes it that much different when literally someone just comes in with the finger and hits a button and that's it? That's all they did. How is that different than you using the cable release? Like, yeah, you're the one that's pushing the cable release,
Yeah.
but does it really change the dynamic that much to where you would be like, nope, still not a self-portrait?
Yeah, I think the fact that you got that person is not a self portrait no more. I mean, I'm looking at the image and all that hair wrapped around her. She could have easily stuck 100 triggers around her to get that shot. So so I don't even know why she needed the person to take the photo, especially like I'm looking at the composition and it from the photo it kind of looked like it was kind of like a side photo, so it looked like you could even hide the trigger in the hand and nobody would even notice. So I do think that's a clear distinction between something being a self portrait versus yeah. Look, she could have had that in the left hand, that backhand. You would never even know, and it's falling into shadows. So this person, it had to be some significance to say, hey, take this photo. And Now, if they didn't have a trigger or something like that, then I could see. But it's kind of sketchy.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Now, in her particular case, the thing that was interesting, and I think what doesn't help her case, is that she said,
I like that. I
she
like that what her
she
photo said, and that's where I think the, like I was saying earlier, the technical aspect comes into play when you get another photographer to do it versus someone who could be just like a little kid, a little kid coming out, hey, just press this button for me. They not probably won't have the insight to make certain adjustments if need be.
yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. Um, Now she says that he was merely acting as a remote shutter since she was wrapped in hair and unable to press it herself. Which I do understand that, because if you had a cable release, she would, like, her hands are down on her side. It'd be tough to be able to not, like, yeah, I mean, she could have photoshopped the cord out of it, but you
Hmm.
wouldn't have been able to do that with a cable release and not have that release in the shot straight out of camera. Number one. If you had a wireless one, at least the Canon one
Yep,
that I have and the
wireless.
one that I've used, you got to point that thing right at the camera. Like, it's not Bluetooth. It's not, like your TV remotes. Like, that thing, there's a little sensor on the camera and you got to point it right at it. So I can see where she couldn't do that. Her photo mentioned the voice active operated triggers, which I've never used those. I get that, but I don't have one. You know what I'm saying? And I wouldn't necessarily think like, oh, let me go and get one just for this one shot. Like, if I had a couple of photographer friends and they like, yeah, just have Mig come and do it. He can come hit the button. I'm there that it's like, okay, he's come hit the button, no deal.
Oh no,
So
I
you
own
come
that.
and
I
do
own that photo at that point.
it,
But now
which is,
you need
and
to
and I
pay me
think
for that.
I think that's the part that surprises me, that there wasn't some sort of contract in place, because as a photographer, she had to know that. Like, she had to know at the point that you bringing somebody else in to take the picture, it's legally theirs. It don't matter if it was your friend, a friend of a friend. That's completely irrelevant. Like, that photo belongs to that person. She had to
Right.
know that. She had to know that. So I'm surprised that she didn't have any contracts in place. And this is what happens when you don't. Like, this is a time where a contract really carries a lot of weight, because it would have been like, no, like, I brought you in just to push this button, but this picture's still mine. It's debatable on if it's considered a self-portrait. I mean, it sounds like the general consensus is that it's not a self-portrait if someone hits the button no matter what. So I think I'm on an island by myself in saying I would consider it a self-portrait if all they did was hit the button. If they're bringing any photography technicality into it, I probably would feel a little different. But if it's just a camera on a tripod and literally all they're doing is pushing the button, I'm still going to consider that a self portrait, because they had absolutely no influence whatsoever. To me, it's no different than me using a cable release or using an app on my phone or something like that. Like, I know another person pushed it, but I would still consider it a self portrait personally. But like I said, I think I'm on an island by myself.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, but what about, if that person has the photography expertise? Do you think it's different from having someone push the button that does not have any expertise?
Yeah, I don't think that makes a difference. I think for me, what makes the difference is, did they utilize that expertise of some sort? Like, if I literally had a camera on a tripod, I set everything up, I picked the settings, I had, like, all I needed them to do was push the button. It wouldn't matter to me if they were the most world renowned photographer in the world. That wouldn't change the fact that I still feel like all they did was push the button. I would still consider that a self portrait, because they did absolutely nothing. It's like they literally just hit a button, and it's like, it comes down to a technicality in a lot of ways. But I think because I've done so many self-portraits over the years, like I understand all of the thought and the effort and work that goes into setting everything up to do the
Right.
self-portrait. So for me to think that someone will put in all of that effort, and then simply because someone else is hitting the button, it now becomes essentially not something that you created. I just can't wrap my head around that, because I get the element of self, but that's where it's like, well, what really is a self-portrait? It's like, is a self-portrait you taking the picture, or is a self-portrait you coming up with the concept and the pose and and like you doing everything? Like, is that what makes a portrait self? Like, when did we define that a self-portrait has to be taken by you? Like, when you have someone stand in front of your camera, you get the credit because you're the one that's doing everything. You're putting them where you're putting them, you pose them, you're figuring out the light, you're figuring out your scenes. So of course, like, that is your portrait of that person. But it's like, if
Mm-hmm.
someone else is doing all of that work, I guess I just don't look at a self-portrait as having to be you took the picture. I look at a self-portrait as you are the one that came up with everything in that image. That was your idea. And to me, that's the self part to me. Workshop and everything is set up for you, and all you do is press the button. Can you take creative credit? I think the front facing
Yeah,
camera,
that's a good question right there.
go and everything is set up, and you do is the button. I mean, in my opinion, no, I don't feel like you could take creative credit. No, I think you could say it's your, like, think about WPPI this year, and they have those booths set up where everything is set up, the lighting is set up, everything is set up, the person is where they are. You have 3 inches on each side of you, so you really can't move. So basically, where you are is where you're gonna raise your camera and take the picture. Did you have any creative control over that picture? No. For all intent and purpose, that picture was a snapshot. That was a snapshot. That's all it was. And we don't in the photography community, we would never really consider a snapshot anything creative. That the snapshot is literally just, there was something in front of you, you put your camera up, you took a picture of it. You didn't have any creative control. You didn't really do anything to make
what
that image.
about
The image
what
was
about
what you just captured it.
I think, like when it comes to me and the models per se, like one model in particular at WPPI, the images that she was given, she was a little tired and things like that. So then I came and I slid through how I do, and put a smile on her face. And then I got totally different shots. So, I had the communication, the eyes locked on the target. I went from landscape to portrait. I bent down, I stood up, you know. That's some creativity. What you think about that?
That's tough, because I think it's I agree with you. I agree with you. So I guess there's levels to it. It's like in terms of creative, when it comes to, obviously, the outfit, the lighting,
Yeah,
the scene. Obviously you had no creative input on that. But in terms of like the outcome of the final image, with respect to expression, which is huge in a portrait, right? Like, I mean,
right,
that's,
right. Yeah.
without a good expression, portraits are flat anyway. So yeah, I mean, I get that's a good argument. I can't argue against you on that. So it's I think that it really just goes to show that it's like there's so much in photography that is not black and white at all, and it really, it's like every situation kind of demands its own assessment of what it is. And it's like, in that situation, I would say this. In this situation, I would say that. It's like a lot of times it's just not black and white at all.
Yeah, the interesting thing for me is I'm just trying to think about everything, as a whole, and it kind of goes back to me in terms of thinking like, is this person somebody that she was like cool with and just thought that she could just bring them in and say, hey, could you just take this for me? Whereas, I feel like if we were doing something like that, I could just say, hey, Todd, can you just take this shot for me? I already set everything up. But then on the back end, they were, they weren't as cool as they thought they were.
Yeah. So to answer that question and to answer a couple other questions, she did not take the picture, and from what I can interpret, and I in the article, I didn't. It doesn't specify, but from what I can interpret, I don't think it was her camera either. I think it was the photographer's camera, the photographer's lens. And the reason why I say that is because he made a point in his statement to say she didn't pick the camera, she didn't pick the lens. So I'm thinking she didn't just have, 5 cameras laying around that were hers and was just like,
Yeah.
grab whichever camera you think is better. That makes me think it was his camera, his lens. She did not know him. He was recommended from a couple male photographers, which I don't know why the article had to emphasize that it was male photographers, but it did. So it was a couple male photographers that she knew. They recommended this person. So I don't think she knew the photographer.
That's interesting because, male photographers that she knew recommended somebody else just to press a button. Huh.
And when you say that out loud, that does sound a little interesting. And I don't, it could have been that they couldn't be there. It didn't say that they were. Hey, I appreciate you coming through though, Bryce. Maybe they couldn't be there for it, and so they were just like, yeah, we can't be there, but here's somebody that you could use. It all still, the whole thing definitely still kind of is weird because I feel like she should have had a contract. She should have known better. She should have had a contract, and there should have just been more of an understanding. Now, I think so. Let me backtrack. I think the reason why I got to this point is because the picture, when she took the picture, I don't think that they did the picture with the intent of submitting it to the publication. So the picture was just a picture. She posted it to her Instagram. I think she posted it to her Instagram a year before she submitted it to the publication. So she didn't do the
Mm,
picture with the intent to submit it. She did the picture just because she does those kind of pictures, right? And
okay.
then once she submitted it and she won, then that's when the photographer came out and was like, yo, that's my picture. Like I was the one that pushed the button. I was the one that made the creative decisions. And he reached out to the publication and they yanked it. So there's a lot of pieces to it that is just like she should have done better. I'm curious why he didn't really make us think about it when she initially posted it to Instagram. Like why didn't he say something then? It's like why
Right.
only when it's in a big publication, now it's a problem. When it's on Instagram and you don't get any credit on Instagram, eh, whatever. But it gets submitted to the British Journal of Photography or whatever, and now you're like, yo, which I mean, I get that to a degree. You like, yo, like I don't give a damn about Instagram, but if my image is gonna be in some big publication on the front page or whatever, like, yo, I want my credit.
Right. That's a different level.
Yeah. So some takeaways. It's like I stress it all the time. It's like, man, you got to have communication. Number one, and number two, like, yeah, she definitely should have had a contract in place for this. But I think going back to what I just said, I don't think that she really thought that it was that big of a deal at the time. It's like if you just
Yeah.
taking a picture and you just like, I'm just gonna put this on Instagram. Like I'm not gonna put it on my website. I'm not
Right.
like I'm just doing this just to post on Instagram. You really don't be thinking let me have a contract. Like I always have one, but I'm sure there's a lot of photographers out there that'll do collabs that don't do model releases because they're just like, I'm just doing this just to post on Instagram, you know? And it's
Right.
like, to me, I still feel like you should have a model release even for Instagram, but I'm sure there's people out there that are just like, this is just Instagram. I ain't worried about it. Like, I'm not getting no model release. We just linking up just to shoot, have fun, whatever, no big deal. Then the problem
Right.
is this runs around, right? Now, a year later, you want to submit one of those photos to a competition, a publication, whatever. Now you need that release. So now you either got to go back and get it, or you do something like what she did and just submit it. And then the person comes back and they're like, yo, what's going on?
Like, yeah, I didn't authorize that. I
So,
definitely ran into that problem when I did a photo shoot about 2 years ago. It was like a concept. Um, it's actually still on my YouTube, but the girl did not want the images on Instagram after the fact because her parents and friends were saying like they were like a little bit too much. And then she was asking for copyrights to all the images. I'm like, what? I'm like, oh no, yeah. You doing a little bit too much for me now, so we're about to have to cut this off. And so I had to like kind of cut her back. I did respect her wishes in terms of the images that were on Instagram. I was like, okay, I can respect that. But I was telling her like this video is still gonna stay up, and I'm still gonna promote it with these images. I won't post it on Instagram, but I'm still gonna promote it. And then yeah, we're not doing no full copyrights of all the images. Like what?
so, and I might have missed it. You did or didn't have a release?
I didn't have a release, and so that is what prompted me to start doing them. When I ran into that problem right there, and that's when I was just starting my YouTube, like the beginning of 2020. So that's exactly where it kind of happened at.
Yeah. So technically, if she really wanted to be petty, because you didn't have a release and because your channel is monetized and that video probably was monetized and you essentially were going to
Well,
make money off the video.
well, no, that my channel wasn't monetized at that time.
Oh, okay. Well, then, yeah, there, it kind of was what it was. Then at that point, it's like, yeah, if
Yeah, yeah,
it's not commercial, at that point, it's just editorial and
exactly. At
not a
that
whole lot you
point,
can do about it.
T to the M to the IDD was still trying to get bubbled up.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah.
that's the part that's tough because it's like, even, man, have I ever had a situation where I don't think I've ever had well, I don't be posting on Instagram that much, so of course I've not had a situation like that. But I've never had a situation where somebody really came after the fact and really had a change of heart on what I was able to do with the images based on the release. Now, I've definitely had people not work with me because they didn't like something that was in the release.
Oh yeah.
And for the most part, there's really nothing crazy in my release. But for the most part, I'm, I would say in general, like I don't budge on what's in the release. I mean, it depends on what they have a problem with. Like there's some, and it depends on the shoot as well. Like if I'm doing a collab with somebody and they have an issue with something in the release, I would obviously be more accommodating depending upon what that was, because it's like, it's just a collab. Like I'm just doing this to get either IG content or YouTube content. So what don't you like? You don't want me to submit it to a publication. Okay, not a big deal. Like I'm not overly pressed about that. I mean, unless it was, a conceptual collaboration where it's like, yo, like I put some time, money, effort into this. Like I had a team, something like that. I'm not budging. But if it's just, I'm just meeting up with somebody to take pictures. Okay, what don't you like? But outside of that, for the most part, especially when it comes to clients, like the contract is what it is. It's like you either agree with it or you don't. I'm not really changing much. I mean, if there's something minor, we can talk about it, but outside of that, it's like it kind of is what it is. And I don't think I've had anybody come after the fact and kind of have a change of heart on what they agreed to. Not that it would do too much. I mean, I would typically respect them,
Yeah,
you know, because it's tough when you have a business, you know, you obviously don't want that bad press, you know. So if some,
exactly.
but that it gets tough because you can't just cater to every demand of people coming after the fact when it's like there was this agreement in place, you signed it, and now because somebody got in your ear, you feel differently, and I'm supposed to just accommodate that. There's a line, you know. It's like
Mhm.
you do want to have the balance of saying, okay, I don't want bad press because I don't want this to impact my business, but there's also that line of I'm not bending over backwards for everybody when the request is really unfounded. You know, it's like you agree, like this was out there, you agreed to it. Just because you change your mind now doesn't mean that basically all the time and effort that I put into it has to go away because you don't want me to use the images, you don't want me to use the video, you don't want this. It's like, how is that fair to me? Like we had an agreement when we
Right,
decided to work together. So
right,
there's always that balance of, you know, sometimes even when it's a business, you still have to be like, yo, even if I'm going to get bad press, I got to stick to my grounds. Like, imagine you do a shoot and somebody's just unhappy for whatever reason. For whatever reason, they don't like the pictures and they want a full refund. And, you know, in your contract, it's like, no, there's no refunds. You can't just give somebody their money back just because they decide they don't want the pictures because there's scammers out there. They'll just say they don't like the pictures just to get their money back. So you got to stand your ground and be like, nah, that's not going to happen. You're not getting your money back. Now, of course, they're going to go dog you. You know, they might write a bad review. They're going to dog you to whoever, but that's just the nature of business. Like you can't bend over backwards for everybody when they're not in the right. So,
yeah, yeah. And when it comes to pictures like that, um, I think in my case, I just took into account the type of photo shoot it was, and it was more like, yeah. So it was a photo shoot where the girl had like gold body glimmer on her, and
was that on your
she was,
YouTube? Because I remember you had
yeah,
a okay, yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's still on my YouTube. So she's
yeah.
basically nude, but she has like some see-through kind of fabric kind of covering her body parts. So on in terms of like Instagram, I guess her family was looking at it and it was like, this is too much. And so from that point, I respected it because I was like, okay, I could see where they might be thinking it's too much. And just out of respect for her, I will do it. But I told her, like, in terms of for my YouTube, I'm like, baby, I'm trying to get 1,000 subscribers. This got to stay up. Yeah, I think I was at
Yeah. So
160 subscribers at that point. So I was like, oh, ain't no way this coming down.
yeah. So they were cool with they were cool with you leaving the video up, or they weren't really cool with it, but they just roll with it.
Yeah, no, they were cool with the video staying up. They just didn't want all the traction on Instagram because more people come through Instagram than coming through the YouTube space and being able to find it. Although, like utilizing things like Pinterest and stuff like that, it could pop back up.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, once it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's the nature of the internet, man. Like once it's
It's
out
out there.
there, it's out there forever, and it might rear its head. But yeah, I mean, you know, her photo, and I definitely sometimes you definitely take that L, and you know, people you can kind of get a feel sometimes for people that have either been in business for a while or they understand business, and they understand that, you know, sometimes you got to be like, yeah, I would never work with that client again. Like it's not about the money,
Right.
it's about the experience with that person. And it's like sometimes the
Right.
money isn't worth it, because if they're going to be a headache from start to finish, and then you got the clients that it's like no matter what you do, they're never happy with the photo because they're not happy with the way they look, and
Right.
they expect you to make them look like how they want to look, and it's like, but that's not how you look. And so
Yeah.
you don't like the photos because I'm not making you look how you want to be, how you want to look. And it's like you'll never please people like that unless you
Right.
do what they want and make them look completely different, which I'm not that type of photographer. Like, I'm not going to do that.
That that translate directly to collabs for me, because here it was maybe like months months later and she comes back around to me and it's like, hey, do you want to shoot? And immediately as she says that, like, a gorgeous woman, so I would love to shoot her. I know we can make some great content, but as soon as I think that far, I automatically think about the headache she gave me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not repeating that.
Yep. Yeah, you got to know when to say no. It's like
Yeah, I just
I
moved
tell
on.
people all the time, like sometimes people just aren't a good fit for you,
Right.
whether that's on a professional level, a collab level, a have fun level. Like some people
Right.
just they're not a good fit, man.
I mean, I'm a little petty because I basically just moved on from her and I just shot her best friend.
Hey, I mean, nothing wrong with a little petty. We need a little petty in this world here and there. Petty makes the world go around. Um, yeah. So
Yeah, and actually, so that was funny because months later she came back wanting to do a collab, and then I kind of was like, nah, I'm okay. And then this was actually recently. It's funny, is recently maybe like actually May, came back around to me as a client this time and asked me to take her birthday photos. And because we did the collab at first, I don't think she knew like how much I charged. So when she actually got a price to what she was getting as a collab, she was like, "Oh man."
indeed, indeed. If they keep acting up, I'll just shoot a friend. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't done enough collabs to really, I mean, I've done a lot of collabs over the years, but not enough to really have experienced that. Like I have more trying to get collabs to actually come through. I have more of a struggle with that. Once I get them to come through, I have a pretty good success rate on everything going the way it's supposed to go. But actually, actually getting them, that's the hard part. That's the hard part.
Yeah, and
Fermented applesauce.
the the thing the thing for me, I had that same exact problem at first, and then when I started getting photo shoots with certain people, like they just opened up the gates for me. It just made it so much easier because this person knew that person or knew of that person. So a lot of the times when I do a photo shoot with somebody else, they agree and they say, "Oh yeah, you did this with my friend right here," or "I know her," or "I know a couple of people," and that just goes a long way.
Yeah, that kind of how it is, and the problem is there's so many photographers out there nowadays. Like I imagine 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I don't know. Social media wasn't big, so it's kind of hard to say. But I imagine, like, if you wanted to do some sort of collab photo shoot or conceptual photo shoot of some sort 10 years ago, it probably was a lot easier than it is now. Because
Right.
I would imagine 10 years ago, first of all, the cost of entry to become a photographer was a lot higher. Cameras were more expensive. They weren't as readily available. These things they weren't as easy to use and user friendly as cameras are nowadays. So it's like if you had a camera or you had a photography studio, like you probably was the real deal. So if you wanted to shoot with
Yeah.
somebody, they were like, oh yeah, definitely. Where it's like now you can get cameras for so cheap, and there's
Right.
so many guys that get cameras just to try to get girls to do nude shoots or bikini
Right.
shoots or whatever. And then, they veil that over, they really just trying to hook up with them, but the photography is the end. That's the easy way to
Right.
get in. That it's like now when you just reach out, it's a lot harder because I think a lot of women, rightfully so, have they guard up way more than they ever would have. So now it's like, oh, this random person reaching out to me. I don't know who he is. I'm not friends with anybody he friends with. Like, nah. So it's just, it's hard nowadays. That's like the hard part is trying to compete with all these guys that are really making it hard for photographers that legitimately just want to do photo shoots. Like, I just want to collab. Like, I'm not trying to get with you. All I want is you to stand in front of my camera and we get these bomb shots. Like, that's what I want from you. But that's kind of like the exception these days. Like, I feel like there's so many more people that is like, yo, I want like every model that I talk to, every model that I work with, I always ask them like, what's like the worst experience you've had, or what's some bad experiences you've had,
Right.
and it's always consistent. It's always, it starts out innocent, and then boom, it immediately goes to either, all right, you want to take your clothes off, essentially, or it goes into them trying to game her, and it's like, oh yeah, you wanna do this, you wanna do that, and it's just like
Right.
there's, I'm sure there's a lot of IG models that probably are flattered by that, but there's a lot of models that they're like, no, like I don't, like I just want to take these pictures like we agreed, like that's all I want to do.
Right.
So yeah, every model that I've collabed with, they all have those stories of photographers like that. So it's like you can kind of understand why they're not overly receptive to wanting to work with a random male photographer that's just reaching out that they don't have any connections with, where they can, hit
Right.
that person up and be like, yo, who is this guy? Like, is he cool? Can I work with him? So it's tough, and I know that the struggle is real. The struggle is real on getting these
Absolutely.
models.
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely had that same thing. And it's funny because I want to say Wednesday, this past Wednesday, I was actually going to go live, but I was running out of daylight. So I didn't go live, but I did like a natural light photo shoot. And the girl did a photo shoot with another photographer. And immediately it's interesting because a lot of the models I work with kind of like confide in me. And so they like immediately tell me like, yeah, I did this photo shoot with this photographer, and it was just weird. Like he was like touching me and trying to like move me like this, but touching me right here. And I was like, yeah, I can't work with him no more. And I'm just like, time and time again,
Yep.
like hearing those things.
Yep. Yeah, that's becoming the norm, unfortunately. Um, and
Or you get the ones where they reach out to the models to do photo shoots and say they want to do photo shoots, but they don't have not one photo on their page.
yeah, that's definitely a red flag. That's definitely a red flag. Or if they have a certain kind of look on their page, and it's like, yo, if that's not what you trying to do, you definitely don't want to work with that photographer because it's clear what they
Exactly.
into. So if that's not your thing, definitely keep it moving. But yeah, to me, I feel like, if you reaching out to a model to shoot, um, you got to have a concept, and it's like, you don't necessarily have to have a full blown concept because, if you haven't really talked to them yet. So you kind of got to talk to them to really, nail down the details. But it's like,
Right.
if you're reaching out to a model, you should have some sort of concept. Like, yeah, like this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do this urban scene, trying to do, a field with a flowy dress. I'm trying, something. Like, you should have a concept. So yeah, but on that note, we hit the hour mark, and my laptop is about to die because since I can't use my beefy one, I can't plug this one in when I got my camera and my mic. So that is going to be the end of this live. But I just wanted to come on quick just to talk about that. I will in the description of this video, I will put the link to the article that we were talking about in this live. So if you guys want to read it in detail, you can. It definitely is interesting, and I definitely think both of them really should look at it differently. Like, I feel like they both are, their stance is too firm for both of them, and I think they both need to really understand both sides of it. So anyway, I'll put that in. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. Mid, I appreciate you coming on.
Yes,
And
sir. Hit that button.
hopefully it won't be another. I don't know when I last went live. I don't know how long it's been. I won't be
2
going
months.
live too much. Yeah, probably. So hopefully it won't be that long. I'm gonna try to go live once a week, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
You put it out in the air.
I know, that's
in the
all.
air. Hold him
I preface it
accountable,
with
everybody.
we'll
Hold
see.
him accountable. Just go to his community page and say, "Hey, another week. I don't see another live."
Yeah, that's how it is. So hey, I appreciate you guys, man. I'll see you on the next one.
All right, man.